Hi, I'm Marie Hopkinson. Welcome back to the Chinese Medicine Podcast. And today I'm actually filming this from my home studio, my musical studio, because I've been so busy lately getting some songs and stuff ready. And I thought that I would quickly make a video for to update the channel and also to let some people know to answer some subscribers' questions. So that's what I'm doing today. And so this is the background that you get. Okay, so this person here, Alex, has said, please make a video about how to live in a damp environment. I live in the UK and I'm very affected by external dampness, like as in the environment's damp, right? So UK, United Kingdom, London, England, that kind of thing. My tongue gets very easily white-coated with teeth marks. When I travel elsewhere to more south, my tongue returns to its natural shape and colour. It's interesting in this process. It is interesting this process, and I'm searching for a way to adapt to the UK dampness environment. So I'll go back into her question. She's got some more information there. So we'll just start by answering some of the start. And I think one thing that we've got to remember is, so in Chinese medicine, there's a few things that we always consider. So one is, okay, the environment is a big part of Chinese medicine. And I don't think it's more a part of Chinese medicine than other systems of medicine. That's one thing that's kind of constantly drawn me towards Chinese medicine, because it makes more sense, like it's adaptable to the environment. And so on one hand, they do say, yes, okay, you should eat what's locally available and things like that, and that helps you suit the environment. But in our Western countries, so I'm from Australia, if you're in the UK like this person, or you're in the US or any other place like that, it's almost impossible to know what's locally available because everything's available now. Like we have such speedy shipping of stuff, and we have we can just store things for ages and you don't know so much what's locally available. But that would be a good place to start with diet, is to strip it back to what is like easily grown and what's cheap and what comes from your local environment is definitely better to eat than things that are externally brought into that area. Let's get the rest of this thing. So she says, I don't eat any of the dampening foods like flour, sugar, milk, and milky products. And I do have problems. In the rainy days, my appetite is very low. And if the clouds are dispelled, my appetite returns. From personal observations, it seems that my body is affected by the external environment more than I thought would be possible. Yeah, I've just kicked the camera. Whoops. Yeah, that's totally true. Your body is being affected by the external environment. And why does one person's body get affected by the environment and another person's doesn't? So the answer to that is in your constitution or your DNA or your genetic code, right? So that's the other thing. So at the start I said, like, Chinese medicine thinks of our body as in, Chinese medicine thinks of the causes of disease as like the external environment, but it also has this understanding of constitution. So some people are born with constitutional deficiencies or a propensity to particular things. And no matter what they do, it seems to be very difficult to overcome that. And so let's say like a genetic abnormality, let's say, where you're born with that from the very beginning. So in Chinese medicine, particularly TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, they would consider that to be what they call an essence or a Jing deficiency. In classical Chinese medicine, it's just probably more simply considered like insufficient yang to provide the function at that very moment of like when you were conceived and in the womb and at that early development age, you didn't have enough yang for your body to produce the function. So you're basically born in it with a kind of a yang deficiency in a way. Some of these things could be repaired or modified or helped, I guess, by Chinese medicine, but some things can't. And like that's where, by the time you're sort of, an adult, you would kind of, okay, well, this is the body I've got now and this is what I have to deal with in that case. Now, what can happen is, so you've got the external environment going on, you've got your genetic code and your constitution, let's say, but then you've also got another thing which we consider like a body type. And there are some people who are just, and this is a little bit, so I'm trying to be very broad on this channel and inclusive in different styles of Chinese medicine. So in one style of Chinese medicine, they would think of body types in the 5 elements. So there's wood, fire, earth, metal, water. And they're different body types. So that gives people different shapes. Like some people are just skinny and they can never put on weight. They hardly ever, it's so hard for them to put on weight. They seem like they are literally woody looking people. And then you've got other people that are always pudgy, that are always rounded, that are always like maybe puffy, or even like they get very edematous. They get very like fluid retentive, and they look more rounded. And so they're two opposite kinds of shapes, right? In a very broad sense, in more classical Chinese medicine, we think of things as like dry types and wet types. And so if you have a wet type of constitution, then you will definitely be more prone to damp. Like there's no doubt about it. And so that might be the case. You just have a wet type of constitution. Whereas if you have a dry type of constitution, then you might enjoy that damp environment. So there are some things where like people's like I like, for instance, I have patients that have struggled their whole life to live, because being from Australia, we have a lot of immigrants from the UK, and they come here because of the weather, because they just want the warmer weather. And they really struggle in the cold. And when they're in the cold, they get lots of aches and pains and joint problems and stuff like that. And then when they come to Australia, all those things kind of disappear away, or they really, really fade away. Maybe not completely disappear. And Australia is a big continent too. Like on one side, like my side, I live in Perth, Western Australia. On this side, let's say, it's very dry. Whereas in Queensland, on the other side of the continent, a bit further up as well, is much, much more humid, and it's hot and humid. So on one hand, it might be hard for you to avoid these problems just because of the environment. And the Chinese medicine answer to your question is, why are some people more affected than others? Like, why are you getting so affected, and maybe your friends and family are not as affected like that? Is because of constitution. Maybe you have a more wetter kind of constitution. How did you get that? Sometimes this could be linked to an inherent spleen qi deficiency. So I think what can happen is over time, definitely over time, your yang declines. So as we get older, we lose yang, and that's aging. That's the aging process. And the yang of our body provides the function, like especially for our metabolism. So the metabolic functions. So water is a yin substance. It's pure yin. And you need yang in there to kind of disperse it. So think of it like if you had a pond and you didn't have an aerator in that pond, and what would happen? It will get damp. It will get like bacteria will grow. It'll get all gunky, and mold will start growing, or whatever that fungus, the algae will start growing, right? If you put an aerator in there, like a thing that blows the air around, it puts more oxygen into the water. It stops that from happening because there's movement there. Now that's yang. So on one hand, you could be just inherently a bit yang deficient, and that could have happened from something. So if you've always lived in the UK, or you've always lived in this environment, and this has just recently happened, then maybe something has happened in your diet and your lifestyle, not just one time, but over a period of time, that's caused you to become more yang deficient. So therefore, you're not coping with the environment as much. Now, the cause of illness, or the cause of disharmony in our body, is basically an inability of our body to cope with the environment. So on a very simple level, it is because either one, the environment is extreme, or your body is weak, or some kind of imbalance of those two. So how strong your body is and how sort of strong the environment is. Like you could have you could be an extremely healthy person. Let's say you're 100% health, the best health you could be, right? And you're fairly young, and you've got lots of yang, and you don't have any problems or old injuries or old illnesses or stuff like that. But you go and live in an extreme environment, well, that will take its toll on you eventually. It will. And so in a way, you could think of it as like, if you don't see health problems in your body, then it's taking away some of your life force. So when you get older, you may suddenly have more health problems. And lifestyle can do that too. So sometimes people will say, oh, I can drink, lots of beers and I don't get any troubles. Or they can be drunk a lot, or they can just live a party lifestyle, let's say. Or they just eat a lot of, very toxic food, let's say. And you just think, wow, how can you don't seem to put on any weight? And they just keep eating pizza and beer, and, maybe it's not pizza and beer, but like just certain foods. Or they drink like tons of coffee or something like that. And you just think, wow, how can you you don't seem to have any detriment to you. But later on, they might get the detriment. And sometimes what can happen is it's just like one day the detriment just happens. So getting back to this person's question, I mean, I'm kind of like answering it with a bit of a rounded approach so you can kind of understand how Chinese medicine would see that. Yeah, it is possible to be affected by dampness that much for sure. And I think it's something that, like as a practitioner in Australia, like a lot of the textbooks we use come from the UK. And there'll be a lot of talk about dampness causing this, dampness causing that, and you just don't. Well, in Perth, we don't see it. We see much more dryness, right? Like, so I have patients. So this would be a good example to you. I have patients, and even for myself, Perth is a place where there's a lot of dryness and there's a lot of wind, and there's a lot of hay fever problems here. So we have winds that blow up from our down south area, which is our colder part, and then also winds that blow, particularly if the winds blow from the desert, which is the easterly breezes towards the south, then they blow across the desert and it's hot. They're warm, horrible warm winds. That can cause people to get a lot of allergies, hay fever, dryness, that kind of stuff. I could be in the middle of, like, before I started doing the herbal formulas that I do now, I used to struggle to find the right herbs to get rid of the hay fever. And so I would be driving my car and just sneezing, and I couldn't stop sneezing. I'd have to pull over because I couldn't see. Like, that's how bad the hay fever would get from time to time. And it obviously different seasons, like different years, the hay fever would be, this is for us in springtime. So I remember being like that. And then once I got the right formula, it just stopped it completely. But one time I was in the midst of one of these hay fever things, and I would just literally be driving around my car with a massive box of tissues next to my driving seat because at any moment, like, I'd drive the car and the winds would come, and then I'd be like overcome with this hay fever, right? And I remember one time I was doing that, and then I flew to China, and like the hay fever just went instantly. As soon as I went to a different climate, it just went away. So I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but it might be like living in that UK environment is part of it. So what could you do for your body to help it? Like, you might not be able to get rid of it, but you could help it. So you want to, like, you've probably watched these already because that's maybe how you found my channel. But there's I've got videos on dampness, so how to avoid dampness, how to stop dampness, 3 things you should do to avoid damp, that kind of stuff. The basic is when you're in that damper place. And the reason why your tongue is swelling up and getting coated is a sign that your spleen chi is struggling to digest the water, like the water part is accumulating. So you want to have a bit more dryness in your diet. Now, I know I said in one hand your body likes warm, cooked and moist, but drier kinds of food, so not dry like old dry crackers and stuff like that, but like grains and stuff that are, maybe you toast them first. Like, so let's say we're going to have oats. If you toast it first, it takes away the dampening part because it makes it a bit drier. And I would avoid processed at all costs. Like, processing foods is a big aspect of dampness. So anything processed, like sourdough bread is better than normal bread, that kind of stuff. So go for those kinds of things to avoid that, or to lessen the effect of the dampness on your body. Beer is the worst alcohol you could have for damp. So like red wine is probably and spirits are the least dampening, and anything that's sweet. So when you mix alcohols with sweetening things, I don't know, vodka, lime and soda, that kind of stuff. But when you put these sort of sugary, or lemonade, I should say, like when you mix lemonade or something like that in those drinks, and you have that a lot, then that will make a lot more dampness. And fizzy drinks and soda drinks and fruit juices, like stay away from that stuff. Like, so just go for sort of plain water and tea, like plain like good old English tea, good old English breakfast. Black tea would be the best, or green tea. Like as in black tea, no milk and no sugar. So I hope that's helpful and useful to you. And yeah, it's kind of like one of those things where there are some places where, yeah, you just maybe you just physically you're not suited to be there as best as other places. And look, it's not possible for everyone just to move. You've got your life, you've got your job. You might have family, friends, and you might just love living in that place and you don't want to leave it. But that is just something to consider, that there are some things where, yeah, okay, some climates suit certain people better than other climates. So yeah, thank you so much for your question. I really appreciate that. And if anyone else has a question, they'd like to put something on to the channel to ask about Chinese medicine for anything, I will attempt to answer your question. So I hope you're having a great day, and thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again on the next video.